Hello, my name is Saikaley. I'm part of the core lab here at Parkwood Institute, and today I'll be presenting utilizing adjunct therapies in stroke rehabilitation, developing a framework. The management and rehabilitation of stroke survivors has made massive strides in the past few decades. This is in large part due to the adoption and standardization of what are referred to as first principles of stroke rehab. Initially focused on specialized stroke rehabilitation units, these have now expanded to include important elements of behavioral therapy and care. Standardization does have its limitations, however, due to the heterogeneous nature of stroke. In addition, although many interventions exist within the evidence base, only a few are applied clinically. Generally, these treatments can fall into two categories: conventional rehabilitation approaches and adjunct approaches, which aim to modify the effect of the primary behavioral intervention. Uptake of this new adjunct therapies, however, has been slow, and one of the reasons we believe is that there is a lack of an intuitive framework to understand and apply these interventions. For this review, we will focus on the upper extremity motor rehabilitation as an example, the purpose of which is to provide clinicians and healthcare professionals with a basic overview of the wide range of interventions used for upper extremity rehabilitation and a framework for understanding and being able to incorporate them into evidence-based practices. This review was conducted using the following literature search following PRIMSA guidelines. For the purposes of this discussion, interventions with greater than 2 RCTs were included, and importantly, RCTs which examined more than one intervention or a combination of more than one intervention are counted towards each category. Here is an example of the conventional therapies used in upper extremity rehabilitation and the number of RCTs investigating each. These interventions are the foundation of upper extremity rehabilitation in stroke, but account for less than 10% of the total evidence base. The remaining interventions would be classified as adjunct therapies and can be further divided into two groups. The primer approach primes or stimulates the brain for motor recovery, and the facilitatory approach acts peripherally to facilitate function and physical changes of the limb. Each of these adjunct types can be further subdivided into three categories. For primers, there are internal brain stimulating therapies, external magnetic and electrical brain stimulation therapies, and pharmacological treatments. For facilitators, there are specific exercise therapies, sensory stimulation and feedback, and technologically motor facilitated exercises. Here are the examples of internal brain stimulation therapies, which can act either through activation of the intact hemisphere, mentally rehearsing the motor task, or adding cognitive elements to the motor task. And in total, there are 275 RCTs that investigate this type of stimulation. Here are the examples of the external brain stimulation therapies, and there are a total of 163 RCTs that examine these therapies. The final primer category is the pharmacological agents, and in total, there are 32 RCTs which investigate different drug compounds. In the facilitator category, here are the examples of specific exercise therapies. In total, there are 210 RCTs which investigate these types of therapies. The next type of facilitating therapy is the sensory stimulation and feedback. Presented here are examples of this type of therapy, with 173 RCTs total investigating sensory stimulation and feedback. Finally, there are a number of technologically motor facilitated exercises. Examples are seen here. In total, there are 293 RCTs which investigate this type of facilitator. Therefore, given such a large evidence base supporting both primers and facilitators, it is our recommendation that clinicians select one primer and one facilitator to apply in addition to conventional care. Selecting both will allow the care team to choose from a variety of expensive or inexpensive options and prioritize patient preferences and responses to these interventions. Thank you.